As I've come to understand, May 13th, 2012. Woman enjoys orbitantly the experience of control because she is controlled by her period. Every month, every 28 days, the same cycle of the moon, she has a hormonal process begin, which forces upon her a whole array of cyclic experience that repeats for enduring amounts of time. The reason why an issue? She doesn't have this problem until she comes of age, till puberty, and thrust beyond her will. She exerts control, control seemingly cast upon her from outside. But this from outside mentality is a current rendition of what's always been. And it's always been this way, it's really not new. And he understood as thus come. Since it always has been, it always will be. And this idea of individuality, where an individual has something thrust upon them, is only a current rendition. This is a reflection of our space and our time, the place we're born and the time we're born in. So it's not uncommon to come into contact with women who do not interpret this being controlled as some negative experience in contrariness to her individuality. The only reason I come across this way at this because this is of a great importance and at this time, but ultimately it's thing, the ever recurring. And being that I have realized understanding in this process, it's not a big deal to me. But if the women make it a big deal, this is a big deal. For they have the actuality now to make a big deal out of it. Now, there are all kinds of psychological and physical issues of suffering in relationship to her period. They are what they are, given the time and the place. But ultimately, it's the same old thing all over again. Coming to terms with this and understanding the affirmation of life in this is unique and individual. But I suspect there have been times in the past, who knows what the future holds, where ladies understood this in a very comprehensive depth understanding and had completely other
orientation towards her peers. Making this fully conscious, however, has a typical response. Objective woman, putting her in the objective, analyzing her, is a very delicate process, because you can analyze the life right out of your existence, and then all you've missed is your life. I heard Joseph Campbell say that somewhere. And I think that as far as ladies, they rely on these, on particular perspectives to try to their identity. But ultimately, their identity is oriented towards another. Towards themselves, but towards another. And this is life affirming in relationship to giving birth. A woman orients herself towards her child, the other, then it's life affirming. But orients herself towards herself, well, this can really cause a deep problem. Now, this doesn't mean that she's not up to the problem. There are plenty that are up to that problem. Men have to go out and be their own individual all the time. And there are some men that have a difficult time with this, and some men that don't. And they thrive being their own individual. But ultimately, the men that thrive, the men that succeed, orient themselves towards what others deem as appropriate. And so what the men are orienting themselves to that are successful is the collective, the other, the feminine orientation. So ultimately, back down to an affirmation of life, orienting ourselves to multiple and various relationships. However, we can go our own way, choose a path where no other has gone. Yet we still must contend with these collectivists, these people that are oriented toward a community, where you surrender your individuality to the collective groupthink, the feminine. You know, what's good for the other is good for the whole kind of deal. So all these things are transpiring, and we do what we do.